Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay, taking a look at tonight's 9-game slate here for Monday. Overall, I coming over from the pitching pod, I felt like this was a great GPP night because there is a lot of kind of boomer bust pitching options, and we also have a Coors game, which is always fun.
A very enticing Coors game where you're going to have to make a really tough decision.
like stacking against Scherzer or even using it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun way to see how people construct their lineups, and especially because you have games in Cincinnati, you have obviously the game in Texas, game in Chase Field, so there's other offenses to kind of pivot to in great ballparks.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll jump into the first game here, Toronto and New York. Chad Green versus R.A. Dickey. Obviously, Chad Green coming over and making a start. Your very average right-handed arm. I'm certainly okay with targeting these Jays bats and kind of the usual suspects.
And put a little more emphasis on Michael Saunders, obviously, against the righty. But, yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Donaldson and Encarnacion at these prices. Probably more of a tournament stack than anything else for me. But yeah, Green has the potential to really let up a lot of runs here.
Yeah, certainly. And I like those values around those big names that you mentioned. Troy Tulowitzki at 3K. I mean, over a 200 ISO against righties this season. Obviously not the most consistent guy, but I definitely don't mind him. Devin Travis continues to be a solid second base option in that mid-tier. Certainly okay with him as well.
Right.
As far as the Yankees go, a little bit boomer bust situation here against Toronto. Obviously, they have some new young guys like Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge. Curious to see how they kind of attack the knuckleball and see if they're able to hit it, just because there's really no track record for them to know what's going on. So obviously kind of GPP options, but overall I don't find myself using a ton of Yankees, but I don't mind some as far as one-offs there.
Gary Sanchez got a little pop in the bat, huh? I really like his price, and like you mentioned, Judge as well. They're bringing up the youngsters, so that's intriguing. In terms of the front of the lineup, we'll see about McCann. I kind of like him, but overall, it's just kind of a gross matchup with two below-average sides, and both Dickey and this Yankees lineup kind of gross me out.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I mean, overall, you look at these guys. None of them really have a ton of success. I mean, obviously against Dickey. So overall, I'm just kind of really looking to move on elsewhere.
Right.
Royals and Tigers here. Daniel Norris versus Ian Kennedy. Look at the Royals side first. I mean, obviously Daniel Norris, a lefty, who hasn't quite figured things out. But overall, I definitely don't mind using a couple of bats here like Lorenzo Cain, Paulo Orlando leading off, and Salvador Perez. I think those are fine options, especially at those prices.
Yeah, I like Lorenzo Cain. But, yeah, as you mentioned, some reasonable prices to target with Norris.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, you feel pretty good about those bats. But I think overall I like some of the Tigers here. You look at Kennedy. I mean, he's really struggled on the road. So I'm certainly okay with using some of those the pop and the right-handed bats there just because there's a lot of home run potential.
Yeah, and then you look at Tyler Collins there. A little cheap punt play at the top of the order, so I don't mind that either.
Yeah. As far as this game goes in general, I mean, a little weather concern. It's not my first choice, but obviously I think there is some value there to be had. And I think it's an interesting swerve away from other games as well.
Yeah, some decent value for sure.
So. Moving on to the next game here, Marlins and Reds, Brandon Finnegan versus David Phelps. Jumping into the Marlins side, obviously the loss of Giancarlo Stanton really hurts this lineup. You look at Finnegan, I mean, he's kind of an up-and-down right-handed arm. I mean, gives up a ton of homers to righties. I'm certainly okay with using Martin Prado and Marcelo Ozuna. Outside of that, though, I'm not really jumping all over this offense.
Not jumping all over it, but I will say Marcelo Ozuna probably a cash game option for me at 34. Gotta love those splits against lefties, and even though Finnegan's been solid at times this year, I think Ozuna swapping into that cleanup spot is a good spot for him.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. And it's obviously in that ballpark, it's extremely friendly for homers. And obviously Finnegan has given up in that department.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the Reds go, I mean, you look at David Phelps. I mean, he's a guy who's shown some flashes of being solid. But overall, I mean, it's really hard to knock still Billy Hamilton and Joey Votto. I mean, two of the most consistent bats at this point in the season right now in the second half. I mean, Votto's a guy who's hitting over 400. Hamilton's hitting over 300 in the second half. The crazy thing is that Hamilton already has more stolen bases in the second half than he does in the first, and it's just because he's getting on base more.
It's incredible. So, I mean, obviously, 2 stolen base upside, 3 stolen base upside. If he can get on base, I mean, it's fairly consistent. So, one of the highest floor under 4K guys I can think of. Yeah,
I think so. And you look at Phelps, I mean, pretty average against lefties, so I'm certainly okay with using those two. Even in Adam Duvall, I don't mind in tournaments just because he has a strong track record as far as home runs against right-handers.
Right.
So, Padres and Rays here, Drew Smyly versus Luis Perdomo. Overall, as far as the Padres side of things go, I'm not really looking to use a lot of guys here. Obviously, I do like a Will Myers as a GPP swerve just because Smyly is really home run prone. But also on top of that, I mean, there really isn't a whole lot else around him.
Yeah, agreed. Will Myers is thankful yesterday's done after his 3 strikeout performance. So, yeah, definitely a better matchup for him here. And I think there's a reasonable shot at him sort of hitting value at 38.
Yeah, certainly. And I kind of like Smyly as a GPP option. So, I mean, I'm really kind of leaning just at Myers and not really looking at some other guys. I mean, you can maybe take a look at like a Solarte or Jabari Blash and GPPs. I'm certainly okay with that.
I saw a Backyard Baseball retweet come out of the Daily Fantasy Cafe account the other day, and I was like, yeah. And this Padres lineup just reminds me of when you had Randy Johnson in the MLB edition, and he could just strike out everyone in the first 4 innings. That's kind of what happened yesterday to this Padres team against Mats, and I mean it's another lefty today, so could be another similar outing.
It's funny because the last active player in the MLB edition is Carlos Beltran. Yeah. Everyone else that was in the MLB edition is retired.
Unbelievable.
So, you still got your Pablo Sanchez, Pete Wheelers, who are never going to die, that whole deal.
Yeah, I feel like Larry Walker was in that game.
He certainly was.
And Mike Piazza.
Barry Larkin, I believe, is in there. We're digging deep here. We are digging deep. I mean, I need to go get like a Melonheads T-shirt. That was the team I always used.
Oh no, you got to use the MLB teams. Got to use the Braves.
You got to get creative there. Oh, Chipper Jones, he was another one in there.
Yep.
So definitely a fun game. Now my nostalgia has brought me down to a new low here. I'm pretty bummed out.
Yep. Childhood
memories.
All of them.
As far as the Rays go, I mean, Perdomo's a guy who does have some stuff that I am intrigued with, but has yet to kind of get it together. I don't mind the Rays bats here. I think some of them are at intriguing price tags. Obviously, you have some value guys like Matt Duffy, Nick Franklin, Kiermaier, all under 3K are certainly intriguing spots as far as from the left side of the plate.
Yeah, give me those 4. I like that stack. Super cheap. You can sort of get the strong splits that you're looking for. Obviously, Brad Miller right there as well. So I like the lefties in this Rays lineup quite a bit.
Yeah, and even Forsythe Longoria, I mean, if you wanted to pay up and make a little bit of a swerve off some other guys, I certainly don't mind here, especially with them projected for 4.5 runs.
Mm-hmm.
Rangers and A's next here. Martin Perez versus Ross Detweiler. And Texas is a team here, I mean, projected for over 5.5 runs here at home. Obviously, some strong numbers here against lefties for guys like Desmond and Beltre. Lucroy hasn't quite hit lefties that well this year, but obviously, given the fact that he is rolling here in Texas, I'm still okay with using him.
Yeah, absolutely. Desmond, Beltre, Lucroy, that's a nice little stack for me, all under 4K. That sounds like a cash stack to me.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, you look at Ross Detweiler, I mean, against righties over the last year, 440 WOBA, 2.00 home runs per 9, low ground ball rate. In that ballpark, everything kind of checks off for those bats there.
Yeah, the Rossweiler isn't so scary at this point, huh?
No, he is definitely not. As far as the A's go, I do like them for value here. I mean, Perez, 340 well with the righties, has struggled against the A's this year, 11 earned runs in 3 starts. And obviously guys like Semien, Smolinski, Valencia, Davis, all offer strong upside at a reasonable price. I think they're a nice value here.
I like all four. I usually roll with the top 3 stack listed there. That's probably what I'd be doing if I make lineups with them.
Yeah, I think so too. So overall, I think they're a great team to kind of working out of other stacks just because they are the best value team on the board.
That's where you want to dive in to really find some of the value hitters in this slate. I think this game is really going to be a high upside one.
Yeah, definitely. And here we go. We got the Colorado and Washington game. Jorge De La Rosa versus Max Scherzer. For me, I was kind of hoping maybe that the Rockies bats would get a little drop down in price against Scherzer. I still don't mind the Rockies here in a GPP standpoint because Scherzer 17 home runs on the road this year allowed, and he really hasn't had a good track record in Coors. So I'm certainly still okay with using them, but not in a cash sense in any way.
I went through the progression of being a little startled to see Scherzer and Coors in the first place, and then being like, oh, okay, well, cash game option against the Rock. Oh, they're in Coors? Okay, no. Well, you know what? It's still Scherzer. Like, he's going to get that high strikeout. Wait a second. He's given up a ton of home runs this year. And that's where we are, folks. So, I mean, he is still in cash consideration to me because I think this Rockies lineup is sort of neutralized by him, but at the same time, yeah, I still like some of these Rockies.
Yeah, in a GPP fashion, I think they're still fine to deploy, but I think obviously diving into the national side is where you're going to want to look. Obviously, I mean, Trey Turner, Jason Worth, Wilson Ramos, Rendon are the right-handers, and even Murphy. I mean, Murphy's been electric against lefties as well, so it's just a matter about fitting them in. That's probably the biggest thing here just because they're so expensive.
Well, luckily there's plenty of crappy pitchers to pay down for today.
There really is. I mean, outside of Scherzer, you can spin down to the Robbie Rays, to the Matt Moores, the Finnegans, if you want to go that route, the Smileys. There are guys to pay down for and kind of still get Nationals exposure.
Right.
So, moving on here, you got the Mets and Diamondbacks, Robbie Ray versus Portola Colon. Robbie Ray stifled this team in New York, but obviously given Ray, I mean, struggles in Chase Field as many of these Arizona pitchers do. I'm certainly still okay with using a couple of these guys like a Wilmer Flores and Neil Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. And even a Ty Kelly who's up at the lineup, 2,200. I mean, I think we can definitely keep looking at those guys. As you mentioned, Flores coming off a few good games in a row. It's not a perfect matchup by any means for this Mets lineup, but there's some exploitable pieces.
There certainly is, and Robbie Ray is one of those guys where, you know, he's either on or he's off. Obviously, there still is a big strikeout potential there, but as we saw kind of when he was at home over the last few starts, it was like he was giving up 5 to 6 earned runs or 4 and still striking out 6 or 7. I could kind of maybe see one of those outings for him, but I also could see the Mets potentially getting shut down as well.
Yeah, definitely. So you like Ray in tournaments for sure, especially at that price, but overall, pretty meh.
Yeah. As far as the Diamondback side here, I mean, it's really hard to get away from Jake Lamb at that price and even a Segura, just because I'm not expecting Colon to come out and dominate Arizona like he did just a few games ago.
Oh, boy. I think I was a little more exuberant than you about Diamondbacks with Colon, so I'm going to be a little less excited about this one, but I still really like Jake Lamb at that price.
I mean, Chase Field is obviously a different atmosphere here than Citi Field, and I think Colon's going to go out there. I mean, big boy, he's going to be sweating off a ton. I think he's going to go a little bit.
Oh, the sweat narrative. I like it. Let's start that. Yeah. My ball might be slipping around. You know when you get so sweaty and humid that, like, you wipe your arm and you wipe your forehead, but then it's just there's so much sweat on your forearm that there's more sweat everywhere.
please. I look like Clay Buchholz in a July start right now. Dude. I'm struggling right now. It's hot. I got to turn the fans off in here. It's like,
yeah,
it's a rough life right now, dude. Dog days of summer.
You're like a defense in backyard soccer when Vicky Kawaguchi's coming at you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're diving deep right now. Diving deep. So overall, I mean, Diamondbacks and Mets, there's definitely some pieces there, and I do expect a little bit of an offensive showing better from Arizona's side than we got the last time out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mariners and Angels here next. Ricky Nolasco versus Felix Hernandez. I'm not really looking to use any Angels bats. I mean, obviously Mike Trout has a solid track record against Felix Hernandez, but still, it just is like when you're paying 4-1, why not just go with Coors, or why not just go to those other games?
Yeah, and you know what? We were pleasantly surprised by Felix last start. He had a tough matchup. I mean, tough matchup against the Cubs a few games ago, too, that he survived. So it's like maybe he's starting to turn it around a little bit. Obviously, we've seen him have quite a bit of upside before, and this Angels lineup certainly isn't a world beater. So I actually think Felix is a cash game option tonight. Even with Trout there, I mean, there's just nothing else there. But I gave the for Ricky Nolasco. It just seems like a night where he's just going to get picked apart by this offense. Yeah,
and although he's pitched better, I'm definitely with you. I mean, he is a reverse splits guy this year, but still not a good guy against lefties as well. 320 WOBA, 0.96 homers per 9, so pretty average. And obviously guys like Cano and Seager are not average lefties, so you definitely give a bump to them. And even a Nelson Cruz is an interesting swerve off of those top options.
Right.
So overall, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of this game in terms of a couple of the ones we've mentioned before, but I think there are bits and pieces here.
Right, and I more mean, like, I'm not super in on Cano, Seager, or Cruz. It just feels like a lineup where Nolasco's going to get picked apart and end up giving up 4 or 5 runs by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, I could definitely certainly see that there. Pirates and Giants here. Matt Moore versus Ryan Vogelsong. Ryan Vogelsong, a little revenge game action here against his old team. Vogelsong's been pretty good in his 2 starts, and I was surprised. And I know they were against the Braves and the Pirates, but I was still surprised about how he pitched. And this game, I mean, obviously one of the lower totals on the board here. I'm not jumping all over the Giants here, but I obviously can still look at some lefties here against Vogelsong because that's obviously been his weak spot in his career.
Who was more shocking to you, Vogelsong in those 2 games or Homer Bailey the other day?
I'm going to still go with Vogelsong.
Wow. 11 strikeouts and no earned runs for Homer Bailey.
But the Brewers against right-handed pitching, that strikeout rate is stupid high.
That's fair. I was just like, man. I mean, you kind of saw a little upside. I didn't see that coming, though.
No, I didn't either. And as far as the Giants go, I like Brandon Crawford's price at $2,600. He's probably the one guy I'm actually okay paying the price with on this Giants team because I don't like Pagan's price. I don't like Belt's price. It's just a lot of ugh.
Yeah, agreed. It is very meh. I might be okay with Denard Span. Yeah, that's the second time I've said that this year.
Yeah, I mean you spaced yourself out, so that's well done.
I mean I don't mind a Span Belt Crawford grouping, but overall I think the upside's a little capped there.
Yeah, and that's kind of my issue. I think given Crawford's price at 2,600 points per dollar wise, he's my favorite option.
Right.
And as far as the Pirates going, Matt Moore has actually pitched pretty solid here with the Giants so far. Obviously, should enjoy that ballpark. Pirates have a pretty low projected total. I'm still okay if you wanted to pick apart Matt Moore here with a couple of righties. Obviously, Jordy Mercer, Kang, Freese, McCutchen, okay guys against left-handed pitching this year. You can make a case for them, especially at those prices if you want to be contrarian.
Agreed. Yeah, you can definitely make a case for it, especially Jung Ho Kang. But obviously, buyer beware on what they've done this year.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think it's a little bit of a false hope.
Despicable what their performance this year.
Oh man, someone used some Pirates this year.
Someone used quite a bit of Pirates early on.
It's a rough life sometimes for us. It's a rough life.
That's fine.
So that's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.